Our featured poet this evening is Deborah Vieyra. Deborah is a writer, teacher, and performer from South Africa, now based in Vancouver. Deborah holds an MA in Applied Theatre from the University of Southern California and a BA in Theatre and Performance from the University of Cape Town. A recent graduate of the Writers' Studio at Simon Fraser University, Deborah's poetry and her prose have been published hither and yon, including in Entropy magazine and Emerge 19. You can find out more about Deborah and her recent projects by visiting Deborah's bio page on Surrey Muse's website, where you'll also find links to Deborah's website and Twitter account. Please welcome Deborah Vieyra.
Hello, my name is Deborah Vieyra. I acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the unceded, ancestral and traditional land of the Squamish, Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. I also acknowledge that acknowledgements are not enough. I come from a land, South Africa, where truth and reconciliation have a complicated relationship to one another. Reconciliation without truth, well, that's just a fancy dress party. And truth without reconciliation, well, that just leaves frustration, fury, and fumes. So I'm here to answer for my ancestors. And part of that is to make these words more active. So rather than truth and reconciliation, to tell the truth and to reconcile. So with that in mind, thank you so much for giving me the space to share my work. I'm currently working on a collection of creation myths, and that wouldn't be possible without the guidance and support of my friend, mentor and collaborator, Mady Schutzman. And my wish for everyone is that they have a Mady in their lives. 1. In the beginning, there was this idea, the world, but nobody knew how to sell it. So we've got light and dark, right? And then the animals, they'll be all different ones, and the people different too from the animals, but the same. And there will be harmony, even with coyotes and cats. Harmony, even with people who want the same things. Harmony, even when some want to rule over others. Harmony, harmony, harmony. We'll make the animals sometimes cute, sometimes majestic, sometimes wise, so that the humans don't want to hurt them. Harmony. We'll make the landscape so abundant and gorgeous that no harm will come to them. Harm, harm, harmony. The land will be protected by its beauty and its providence. Yes, let's greenlight this. It looks like it will work. Let's go. 2. In the beginning, there was a white settler. Fact check, fact check, fact check. 3. In the beginning, we were all illegitimate, the product of an encounter that nobody wanted to talk about. So here we are now on this little planet, and everyone up there is keeping mum about the fact that we exist. Neglected children of the universe, unable to self-soothe. Every now and again, some random god finds out about us, and there's a battle over us. Things get heavy. That's what earthquakes are, if you must know. And sometimes there's violence. That's what wildfires are. And sometimes there's kindness. Because even in a universe so lacking in accountability, there's maybe someone up there who gives a damn. And that is speckled sunlight after light rain. 4. In the beginning, there was Martha Stewart, ruler of all things. The people on earth were constantly trying to impress her. they always felt not good enough, which was ridiculous because she was actually pretty chill. She was fine, you know, she just wanted to be up there in the sky and bake, really, but the people were like filled with all this anxiety. Am I doing it right? Am I being a person properly? Am I nailing this? Are you judging me? And Martha was like, are you serious? Can we just get on with it? I've only ever said you were awesome. What's the problem? You do you, I'll do me. But still, the people ached and stressed and were unsure, so insecure about their part in all of this. Okay, fine, she thought. I'll send my only son for all of you to hang out with. Then we're cool. And the people were like, what the? How embarrassing. Is he going to be like following us around like security? What the? But Martha Stewart was adamant. Something had to shift, and if anyone could help her with the maneuver, it was her dear, darling son. And then the son came. And he was everything the people had ever dreamed of. He was noble and wise and decidedly cute. And that was awesome. Except for the fact that this just made the people feel even more inferior. Now they not only felt judged from above, but from right up close. All the time. And so it became that Martha, the god of all things, was more like a mother-in-law. And so it is still. 5. In the beginning, there was a pain in his side. What was it? His rib. Someone was trying to steal his rib to make a person. Someone was trying to cleft him away from himself, and he didn't want to give anyone his damn rib, okay? But the powers that be were stronger than he. The rib was to be theirs. They wanted to take it, and so they did. They put him under anesthetic. How kind. They stole his rib and made a reluctant person who felt perpetually guilty about the violation of rights it took to make her. 6. In the beginning, she meant to get round to creating new worlds, but she just never did. A depressed god. Anything she actually made was a miracle. 7. In the beginning, there was a mold problem. Mold like you can't find the source. Mold like trauma. Mold like a dank, dark daydream. Mold like that smell you just can't identify. Mold like nothing ever dries out. Mold like lasting and lasting but with no real point. Mold like chronic paranoia. Mold like is it even there? Mold like a fine dusting of snow. Mold like it would be beautiful if it weren't so pernicious. Mold like nothing will ever be the same again. 8. In the beginning, there was a simple flower that grew in a void. She looked like tinsel. For eons she grew on her own in the void. Nothing else was there but her and the void. She knew no other way and was quite content with this. But then one day, her leaves started to change. She started to droop. And there and then, slowly started to unravel. Was she reaching mortality? The flower had to do something, and fast. If she didn't exist, what would? She started trying to make more of herself with her expired leaves, but they had no life force left in them. It was then, bravely, that she decided to beg the void. She begged the void to help her propagate. But the void was sadistic. The void, a talented creator, sure, enjoyed being the perpetrator of a bit of recreational abuse. He only created from a place of cruelty. With the flower's sweet-voiced request, the void now saw that there was fun to be had. He agreed to help, but on one condition: that the flower and all her descendants would never forget the void. That every now and again, for fun, the void would threaten to swallow them all up. The void would be allowed to taunt them with their own demise. The flower could not agree to this. How could she be a part of bringing a world into being that was terrified of the void that it came from? But it was too late. She could not take back her request. And so it began. And on goes the war between the flower and the void and the flower, with us as its children. 10. In the beginning, there was one rule: never fall in love with your doppelganger. This was an absolute no-no. Once the match was struck, it would be impossible, like Pandora or something. And as is the case with rules, this one went right ahead and got itself broken. As two carbon copy creatures gazed into each other's mirror eyes, they could not stop themselves. Well, they thought they could not stop themselves. And then they started to realize what their love was unleashing. Each time they touched, there emerged suffering for everyone else. Disease, war, greed, anger, road rage, hoarding of resources, false hopes and fake promises. But still the doppelgangers went on with their affair. They couldn't appease this desire in any other way than through themselves. They could not, or thought they could not, stop themselves. 11. In the beginning, there was a shadow before there was a thing, almost unencumbered, an artistic collaboration between light and dark, pre-substance creativity. The shadow morphs, it twists, it turns, it invents, it scares, it frustrates, it expands, it spooks, it shrinks, it disappears. It is often forgotten. It doesn't seem to like the snow much. It grows beyond measure and beyond source. It doesn't mirror, unless you don't understand anything. And that, children, is why we have anxiety and ghosts. The shadow was actually here first. 12. In the beginning, I was minding my own business. And this, officer, is how it happened. I saw a thread dangling underneath the couch. I guess it must have been something that my kittens expertly extricated from the general couch material in one of their many scratching exercises. I thought it best, as you might have done, to pull the thread in the hope of removing it. I've always had this thing, you see, about not wanting to look shoddy. All the time getting it wrong, but this is my intention, you see, to not look shoddy. My parents were often shoddy, heads caught in priorities that were not even in the same province as housekeeping. As a result, this was a thing I inherited, as most children do, a desire to disinherit everything. They were shoddy, so I should fight with everything in my will not to be. Despite, of course, the fact that this is utterly impossible. One cannot fight one's inheritances. One has to accept the gifts, regardless of how much one despises them. I thought a light pull would suffice. By this point, I might add, officer, that the kittens, so that you understand, the kittens who were likely the original producers of the shoddiness were simultaneously busy with another project. I could hear them, scratching under the door, chipping paint, catalyzing more shoddiness. So my urgency, you can understand, to remove the thread from underneath the couch so as to prevent at least this particular iteration of shoddiness was propelling me forward in the task. Urgently. And how could I have known, really, about any of it? How could this simple task, the minorest of versions of keeping up with the Joneses, only a fragment, in fact, of that, how could this one little activity cause all of this? Who knows? All I know is that if I see a string, it's imperative that I pull it. And I'm sure now you understand the reasons why. Now, just so that you understand that I've now learnt my lesson, I would now definitely, categorically, and without a doubt take another course of action should I ever be presented with the same situation again. I would now, if I could do it all over, use scissors, a snip, or even a knife. Although not preferable, I know, scissors would have been best. A knife is far too lonely an instrument for this kind of task. I've never been one for the kind of rabid individualism that a knife proposes. Scissors would have been best. Dual blades working together. Cut it off at the source. Never to be worried about again. But officer, I pulled. I think we can agree by now that this was not an innocent move. But it was at the very least unintentional. I'm not sure how that holds up in court. If you mess up, you mess up, regardless of intent, I suppose. But I think it is important, at least in this case, to know my intent. Perhaps, if nothing else, to better understand my character as the maker of this proof that the pudding is in. Where were we? I pulled the string. And rather than snapping, it seemed to just keep coming and coming, like it was never going to end. I had to keep pulling. In for a penny, in for a pull, if you catch my drift. And then a world started to leak out. First came promises, followed closely by regrets. Then came tomorrows and yesterdays and the feeling of passing from one to another in a way that is not always linear, but is sometimes devastatingly so. After that came prayer and hope and artistry. They were intertwined in a big ball of mess. I kept pulling because I had to. I just did by this stage. What else was I supposed to do? I pulled out sunsets and seashells and brothers and carp and a rosary and dynamite and small packages and tiny toes and anemones and a dictionary that was too heavy to lift and a government building and strings of lights and a hippopotamus and a variety of plagues and a toy boat that goes in the bath, and I kept pulling and pulling. I pulled out sinuses and a tarot deck and a biker dude and crumpets and an active volcano and a bar on wheels and an NGO and inequality and an academic and a wig, and I pulled and I pulled. It was all so much like our world. So much. But there it was, trapped in my couch this whole time. What was I supposed to do but let it be? And that, I now understand, is where the confusion started. To have these worlds, these parallel ones exist, with some people firmly rooted in one and others in another, and nobody really sure where they belong. Two realities, and those are the ones we know of. What a mess. I don't know how one reaches across abysses this vast. I don't know what it means to create, when it is surely the case that everything was already here. I don't know how to explain what I know. On days like this, I try to make excuses. I blame, too. I blame the cats a lot. And I don't even know if they were responsible for the dangling string in the first place. But my goodness, do I blame them. I blame my parents for making me resent my own shoddiness, for not keeping up with their housekeeping, and so leaving it to me to hate all this, to hate this in myself, leaving me to pull strings and create all this confusion. I blame hindsight. What's the point in knowing now? But I know none of that really matters. The cat has been let out of the bag. Pandora's box is open. The metaphors are all free. Officer, I'm not sure what you do with a person like me. In the beginning, there was debt, and they could never repay it. In the beginning, there was a deficit, and zero seemed oh so far away. In the beginning, there was a brainstorm in a boardroom, and nobody could agree. In the beginning, there was an elevator pitch. In the beginning, God was a narcissistic billionaire from another planet, only looking after the ones he deemed suitable. In the beginning, they had to find new planets to colonize, because the destruction to their own was too great. In the beginning, there was prehistory, and we're still in it. In the beginning, the bellies grew, each one of them. They grew and grew, perfect, round, plump, full bellies filled with creation. A creation farm. In the beginning, there were 3 gods and one got lost, and that's when all the problems began. In the beginning, she woke up from a nightmare. This was not the beginning at all. In the beginning, there was a collision of planets. The one planet said, sorry, can I have your insurance details? The other planet said, oh, I'm not insured. What a fuck up. In the beginning, there was the heralding of a crow. In the beginning, there was coffee on the brew. In the beginning, she went on a quest for new metaphors and stopped. In the beginning, she began Act 1. In the beginning, she preached about the dangers of the blank page. In the beginning, she realized that you have to start from somewhere to get anywhere. In the beginning, there was a prophecy. In the beginning, they were told they only had so many months until it was over, and that it would be over in horrific ways. And with all this news, they went about doing absolutely nothing. In the beginning, they offered up their madness to each other. In the beginning, she wondered why she had memories. Was this really the beginning? In the beginning, she pulled a thread. In the beginning, they all lived snugly inside the hippocampus and then migrated to the frontal cortex. In the beginning, we had the cure, but the people wouldn't take it. In the beginning, there was unbending opinions and misinformation and bloodlust. In the beginning, there was only fire. In the beginning, there was a ravaged land. In the beginning, there was negligence. In the beginning, she wanted time to herself. In the beginning, she was alone. In the beginning, they hung from a plane trying to escape the end. In the beginning, there was fresh air. That's all. Thank you.